It's been quite the battle, 9 rounds behind us and only a few to go. The score is currently tied up at 4, but the victor will be determined in the last 3 rounds. Round 10 is up next and is definitely one of the most anticipated rounds in the series. We are talking about game consoles, and games are what truly matter. Exclusive games are up next, so get ready for some heavyweight game console action. It's LP from Techno Buffalo, and welcome to the next installment of the Console Wars. At the end of my previous round, I mentioned that round 10 was going to be covering the future of game consoles, but the recent announcement of the PlayStation Move stirred up my plans a bit, so I need to get my facts straight before I tread into that territory. So today we're going to be looking at exclusive games. I'll be assessing the games in terms of graphics, commercial success, and critical acclaim. So a very exciting round to come, so stay tuned. Back in the day, all games were pretty much exclusive to a single platform. You had your Nintendo games, Sega games, and your PC games. Some bonds have lasted since the olden days, but some have been broken. Exclusive games have always been a hot topic because they are what truly differentiate the game consoles from the competition. If you check the comment sections in the previous rounds, you'll notice hundreds of comments like, "The PS3 sucks because Halo 3 is the best game ever." Well, if you ask me, it's not the best, but let's talk about Halo 3 from the perspective of this round. Halo 3 was released back in September 2007. The game sold over 5 million copies on launch week and over 12 million copies sold to date. When Halo 3 launched, the PS3 honestly had nothing. It was basically dead in the water. Sure, there was Resistance Fall of Man and Motorstorm, but they can hardly be considered as system sellers. I think it's pretty safe to say that Halo 3 can be considered the cornerstone of the success of the Xbox 360. And if you look in the dictionary under system seller, you'll probably find a picture of Master Chief. I played through Halo 3 last fall, and being an old school PC gamer, I personally was not too impressed. But I do realize the franchise introduced a whole new generation of players to first-person shooters and online gaming, so I'll give credit where it's due. Graphically, Halo 3 is of course today a bit outdated. It runs at 640p and it's upscaled to 720p. It's starting to look a bit rough around the edges compared to modern games, but still Halo 3 can be considered a good-looking game. Halo 3's Metacritic score is a whopping 94, which is definitely impressive. It's one of the top-ranking games of all time, and overall, Halo 3 can be considered as one of the top exclusive games of this console generation. On a side note, I played through Halo ODST last fall, and I actually enjoyed the campaign more than I enjoyed the campaign of Halo 3. Not exactly a full game even though it sold at a full price, but overall ODST was a very solid expansion, and I can recommend checking it out. The PS3's first big hit was Kojima Productions' 4th installment to the Metal Gear franchise. Solid Snake was back for a unique, action-packed, story-driven adventure, and the game is a fine example of consistently great ideas and gameplay inventions executed to near perfection. And the game has what many games lack, which is creative vision. Hideo Kojima's stories may be a bit complex for the average casual gamer, but hardcore gamers can appreciate what the Metal Gear series has to offer. Up until the Guns of the Patriots, the PS3 had nothing to top the Xbox, and the game may have actually saved the PS3's ass back in 2008. The game was not the massive commercial hit the Halo 3 was, but has managed to sell over 5 million units to date. The problem is, the game is rumored to have cost over $80 million to make, which means the game wasn't the cash cow Konami and Kojima Productions had hoped it to be. So it's no surprise that Kojima's team has jumped ship and gone multi-platform for the next installment. And I hear it's going to be starring the naked dude from Metal Gear Solid 2. So henceforth, Metal Gear is no longer a PS3 exclusive, but if you own a PS3, I recommend picking up Guns of the Patriots, because it's definitely a game every self-respecting PS3 owner needs to own. MGS4 has a Metacritic score of 94, and it's a better game, in my opinion, than Halo 3.
Guns of the Patriots.
Okay, next up is Forza 3. There's always been the console-defining racing games, and the Forza series can be described as exactly that on the Xbox. The latest installment to the series is definitely a looker. It's a gorgeous-looking game in every aspect. The car models look great, and the textures and effects are superb. And the game controls great even without a racing wheel setup. Forza 3 is definitely one of the best racing games I've come across. The game is packed with content and the multiplayer component is great. Forza 3 has a Metacritic score of 92 and is undoubtedly the best racing game of this generation. Well, that is at least until Gran Turismo 5 comes out. I've been starting to have my doubts about Gran Turismo 5 because it's been in the making for half a decade and the game still has no release date. Undoubtedly, Gran Turismo games have always been consistently great, so you can expect the game to compete with Forza 3, or at this rate with Forza 4. Overall, Forza 3 has great graphics, great gameplay and is fully featured with content. Gran Turismo 5 on the PS3 is still a no-show. Killzone 2 is pretty high up there in your viewer comments, and to some extent it deserves to be there. Killzone 2 is a sequel to a game that very few had ever even heard of, but it's a game that was hyped for its amazing visuals over 2 years prior to its release. And for the most part, it meets those high visual expectations. If there ever was a game that looks stunning, it's Killzone 2. The physics, the effects, the animations all look like something I expected from this generation of game consoles. The graphics in Killzone 2 are among the best of any games made to date, but in all honesty, the gameplay is repetitive and the controls are a bit clunky. And the story didn't exactly wow me either. A bunch of PS3 fanboys complain about the review scores, but in all honesty, I think they're pretty accurate. The game still has an impressive Metacritic score of 92, which is great for a title that was more of an okay game than a knockout. But on March 22nd, Killzone 3 was made official. It will be running on the same game engine, so I would now expect for the emphasis to be on the gameplay and story. Fable 2 is Peter Molyneux's and Lionhead Studios' love child. It's a grand-scale RPG with a massive amount of freedom of choice. Fable 2 was not a massive commercial and critical success, but it still managed to receive some respect from RPG gamers. I'm personally not a big fan, even though I enjoyed the excellent freedom of choice. The world itself was a bit bland and uninteresting. I'd rather play Fallout 3 and bust some bottle caps and sick my dog on some mutants, rather than teach my dog some tricks like in Fable 2. But there are a bunch of fans waiting anxiously for the third installment to the series, which is actually sounding pretty interesting. In Fable 3, you'll be able to take the throne and rule over the whole kingdom of Albion. And this time your choices will have some serious effects and consequences over the entire kingdom. Fable 2 has a Metacritic score of 89, which is pretty decent, but nothing to truly boast over.
And only the foolish don't pack emergency underpants.
However, the Xbox 360 has another very interesting studio making RPG exclusives, and that studio is Hironobu Sakaguchi's Mistwalker. Sakaguchi is best known for being the creator of some of the best Final Fantasy games, and his first two Xbox 360 exclusives were pretty decent, but failed to find an audience. And the reason for this is the fact that the audience for the type of games Mistwalker makes, many would agree, is over on the PS3's camp. I think the chances of an exclusive JRPG succeeding on a Microsoft platform are slim to none. The audience is simply not there. I know for a fact that a bunch of people bought the Xbox 360 just to play Mistwalker games, but not enough to tip the scales. Insomniac Games is a respected company that has a bunch of interesting titles, including Resistance Fall Man and the Ratchet & Clank series. I played through the first two Resistance games and I thought they were good but short from great. Having long experience in FPS games, the Resistance games do not stack too high on my list. I enjoy the scale of the battles, but the gameplay feels a bit too generic. The multiplayer is kind of fun, but a bit too chaotic for my taste. I enjoy staying alive for more than 5 seconds. Resistance 2 has okay graphics, but nowhere near the kind of graphics you see in Killzone 2. The Metacritic score of Resistance 2 is at 87, which I'd say is pretty fair. The Ratchet & Clank games can definitely be considered among the top current generation platformers. Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction and Crack in Time both look great, the stories are fun, and the gameplay is spot on. You can't find much better platformers around these days, especially not on the Xbox 360. Sure, you can find some pretty fun older Rare games like Banjo-Kazooie on Xbox Live, but that's about it. Overall, thanks to the Ratchet & Clank series, the PS3 definitely has it better in the platformer department. Little Big Planet. Definitely not my favorite game, but a unique and interesting platformer and building game that appeals to a wide audience. The game relies heavily on user-created content, and it's actually the best thing about the game. You'll have a blast exploring some pretty fun user-creative levels. The graphics are charming and the characters are kinda cute, I have to admit. And also a fine example of the diversity PS3 exclusive have to offer. Even though it's definitely not my favorite game, Little Big Planet has a massive Metacritic score of 95, and there's nothing like it on the Xbox 360.